Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout is one of those video games that I'm certain no one saw coming in its rise to fame. Its announcement at E3 2019 seemingly went over people's heads, and there wasn't too much talk about it. It wasn't until Fall Guys was preparing for launch was it being talked about, and talked about rampantly. Not only were digital keys being given away like candy during Halloween, but it was also free on PS Plus for its entire launch month. This was a strategy that I didn't bother understanding because I got the game free through PS Plus. But I understand the marketing tactic now. A game this fun needs to be played by as many people as possible in order to market itself on YouTube and Twitch. Otherwise, it'll die as quickly as Rocket Arena. Fall Guys is a video game that clearly takes inspiration from game shows such as Ninja Warrior, Wipeout, and Takeshi's Castle, aka MXC for Western audiences. Developed by Mediatonic and published by Devolver Digital, the conception of Fall Guys began in January 2018. With those game shows clearly in mind as the core basis and inspiration for the game. The game was released on PC and PS4 on August 4th, 2020, where it quickly became a roaring success because of its unique take on the Battle Royale genre, ridiculously cute characters, and funny as hell gameplay. The objective of Fall Guys is relatively simple. You must be the last jelly bean standing through a gauntlet of anywhere between 3 and 5 minigames, sometimes 6 if the players are good enough. Your tools for game show superiority are jumping, diving, grabbing, and that's honestly it. Unlike most battle royales, there's no guns or blood to determine who's the last player standing. Once again adding to the sheer charm and uniqueness of a relatively new, albeit oversaturated genre. Everyone moves at the same speed, whether they're running, being yeeted into the sky, falling to their end, or just plain being pummeled by the obstacles that are entirely capable of eliminating you. In short, it's just as fun to spectate in Fall Guys, after finishing the obstacle course hopefully, as it is to play. Fall Guys isn't exactly a graphically impressive video game. The backgrounds beyond the obstacle course are simple and generic, and the obstacle courses themselves achieve the desired look of a colorful game show. It's all on purpose, as you usually begin each episode as one of 60 players. It was originally 100 at some point in its game development, but that was deemed too crowded, so it was toned down to 60 players. And as for the players themselves, that's where Fall Guys truly shines. The adorable and confirmed jelly beans that you play as almost resemble the minions from Despicable Me in terms of physical build, but are far less annoying and endlessly customizable. You originally begin as a blank slate, like an Easter egg without paint. But through skins and colors that you acquire over time, you're guaranteed to find something that brings out your inner Fall Guys jelly bean. My inner bean is a wolf because I'm into furries. I also think it's adorable how derpy the Big Bad Wolf skin looks. I'd even go so far as to mark it as the Wiggler helmet of Fall Guys skins. These characters have also led to a ridiculous amount of fan art, fan-made plushies, and figurines, and collaborations from other video games, most notably from Valve and some indie video games. Makes you wonder what kind of collaborations are possible if Fall Guys was on the Nintendo Switch. Sadly, the soundtrack of Fall Guys is composed of 6 tracks at the most. It's a shame too because the soundtrack definitely displays the energetic game show aura that is the core of the gameplay. I wish there was a few more tracks like that, honestly. More music for people to say, it kinda sounds like Splatoon. And even though this music was played during a couple of Fall Guys trailers, I would honestly like to see more vintage music accompanying future Fall Guys season announcements. The E3 2019 trailer had Jumpin' the Line by Harry Belafonte, and the launch trailer had Hot Diggity Dog Ziggity Boom by Perry Como. I wonder what song would fit well with the medieval theme of Season 2. Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis? I don't know. I predominantly listen to video game music anyway. Music aside, the Jelly Bean characters themselves have their own little soundtrack. Their dialogue consists of the letters W, H, and a lot of O. High-pitched and adorable. It gives these lovable beans their character, especially when they're being pushed and grabbed and launched off the stage. If Fall Guys has a story, then it's Spartan and wordless. You're in a game show. Every session you're in is called an episode. Your ultimate goal is to be the last bean standing to win a crown. And regardless of that, you'll always earn kudos and fame. Of course, this game could secretly be a horror game.
I want to live! I get to see my family again!
By my calculations, there's a total of 25 minigames in Fall Guys. These minigames consist of races, where a set amount of participants will pass if they finish ahead of the pack. There's also survival, where if you fall, you're eliminated. There's even team games, where you're partnered up with other players and have to work together or else get eliminated if your team loses. And lastly, final rounds where the last being standing will win a crown. You're practically guaranteed to do each one of these en route to victory. It ultimately depends on randomness and how skilled or lucky every single player is. Rotating platforms and falling balls are the staple of this obstacle course. To finish this race minigame, you must move in the same clockwise or counterclockwise direction of the platforms, and avoid getting smacked by the balls that are shot out at you. Oh, and be sure to jump over the gap at the end. The newcomers tend to not see that fall coming. Balance and a fundamental understanding of seesaws are keys in this minigame. You must make your way from start to finish while minimizing the amount of tilt you put onto a seesaw. The first wave of them won't tilt, but they will lean and make it difficult for you to ascend them. The seesaws past them, if too many players are on one side and or take too long, will practically go 90 degrees and force you to try again. Jumping and diving towards each seesaw for some reason gives you better traction on them. Use that to your advantage. Oh, my current occupation when I'm not drawing or making YouTube content. You need to make sure your phone is fully charged and there's offers going on in your area. And don't be afraid to decline routes if they're too far for you. It's about maximizing your profits while minimizing gas usage. It also helps if you do Postmates and Grubhub at the same time. Wait, that's not right. You just break through the correct doors and try to avoid falling behind because you're susceptible to being shoved aside in a mad dash to make it through the open doorways. It gets harder and tighter the further you go, wink wink. A race course where you must avoid getting smacked by fruit while running on a treadmill. It's considerably safer to stay on the left and right sides than to be in the middle. Anticipate where the fruit are coming from, and you should make it without too much issue. A race course with several pinwheels to push aside, swinging pendulum balls to knock you over, and a slippery slope that you must overcome to finish. You can afford to fall down at the beginning, but you can't really afford to fall down at the end. A race minigame that requires timing just as much as speed. The gates rise and drop, which can either impede or allow you to pass. And at the very end, there's a gap that you must jump through, also with gates that could block you off. The trick to this one is to go to a gate that's about to drop, so that you don't have to wait at all and keep moving. Perhaps the most chaotic of all the minigames, and it's not even a final minigame. In this survival course, players must climb to the top of a serpentine path, full of moving platforms, slick terrains, and treadmills that are entirely capable of pushing you into the slime. If you happen to reach the top before anyone else, it's entirely possible to unleash your inner scumbag and push someone off. But beware, as it's a double-edged tactic, and you'd hate to eliminate yourself when you could have crossed the finish line. This obstacle course is full of rotating poles that'll sweep you off of your feet. You can jump over them, or, if you're dexterous enough, ride them to get through the first half of the stage. Afterward, avoid getting swept off by the propellers. Also, there's a trick to get through the middle propeller by diving at the right time to squeeze through the left or right corner. It takes practice and honestly isn't recommended to finish strong, but it could help you get ahead of the pack if you're trailing behind. The first rule about Jump Club is to not talk about Jump Club. Players must jump over a rotating pole that moves slowly at first, but gains speed over time. Under no circumstances do you want to be in the way of when the top and bottom poles converge, because it'll knock you off with little difficulty. A timed survival minigame that requires you to stay on the platform as walls are cycling towards you in an attempt to knock you off. It incrementally gets more and more constricting, meaning you have to be more and more dynamic. If you keep your distance from other players, you can minimize your chances of falling, because it's entirely possible that several of you can fall into the slime and get eliminated because of the physics of this game. This survival minigame can easily be one of the longer minigames. The goal is to stay on the platforms as they're rotating left or right, faster and faster as time goes on. You can jump between platforms, but exercise caution when doing so. Also, try not to congregate with other players because you never know who's feeling trollish. A relatively disliked minigame that simply requires you to keep a tail plugged in between your jelly bean cheeks to win. What can make this minigame dubious for players is how wonky the grab detection is. Even social distance seems to be enough of a distance to nab a tail. Also, having the tail for 99% of the duration of the minigame doesn't mean squat if you lose it during the final 1%. Just stay mobile when you have a tail and hope for the best. A team game where 2 out of 3 teams that grab the most eggs wins. A strong start here means that you can attempt to steal eggs from other teams. One recommended strategy is to throw eggs by jumping and diving and letting go to release them, either to catapult them to your basket or to get them out of another team's basket. Another strategy is to hoard the gold eggs in your basket by grabbing them and hugging the corners. Regardless, it's somewhat difficult to overcome a deficit in this minigame. This is COVID-19, the minigame. 2 teams of 15 plus players have to stay disease-free the longest. One player from each of those teams is jinxed automatically, and they have to spread their sickness to every other player in their opposing team. The premise is simple: evade when clean, contaminate when dirty. In this 3-team minigame, the top 2 teams with the most balls win and proceed onward. To make sure your team has balls, you must push and headbutt them to your team's respective zones, and keep them in there for as long as possible. Other teams will try to castrate you, so you must make sure they don't succeed in their attempts to control the bean population. A reasonably fun 3-team game where you must jump through hoops to score points. The hoops are always moving around the map, some of them requiring you to dive through them with a modicum of dexterity, and every once in a while, you'll see gold hoops. These are worth 5 points compared to 1 point, and could distance yourself from the other 2 teams if you manage to jump through it. You live by the ball, you die by the ball. Another 3-team minigame where the last team gets eliminated. Your objective is to push and guide the ball, either as a group or individually, down your path. Your progress is marked by percentages, which are capable of going backwards if you're unfortunate enough in having your ball pushed up by the opposing team. Until there's a Rocket League collaboration, this is the next best thing. In this minigame of blue team versus yellow team, players essentially play soccer and attempt to score the most points. And due to the physics of Fall Guys, this is probably one of the most fun minigames. If you're able to, shortly after a goal is scored, you can headbutt the new ball toward the opposing team's goal for a chance to score consecutive goals. And if you're extremely lucky, you may see a giant golden egg appear instead of a soccer ball. These are worth 5 points. It's just like tail tag, but with teams. The premise is the same, only the team with the least amount of tails plugging their bean holes loses. Also, this is the only minigame in Fall Guys that has 4 teams: red, blue, yellow, and green. You know, if green team was around more, do you think it would be as ridiculed as much as yellow team? Probably the most quote-unquote boring of survival minigames. All you have to do is have competent memory and stay on the platform as other players are shoving and pushing. It starts with 2 images, then 4, and then 6. Keep track of where they are, and you shouldn't have too much difficulty. Or you could rely on mob mentality. It's not always right though. An interesting race minigame where the winner doesn't necessarily mean being the fastest or the craftiest. The winner could be the most daring or the luckiest. The reason being that there's only a couple of correct paths in this randomized minigame, and you must make sure you're there when the path reveals itself. Something to take note of is that when the penultimate platform is revealed, that's when you should book it. To some, this might be the easiest of final minigames. It's straightforward and probably based on that rock avalanche game from Takeshi's Castle, or Most Extreme Elimination Challenge for English audiences. Avoid the balls, read the terrain, and grab the crown to win! If you're not smacked a single time, you have a good shot of finishing first. This final minigame actually requires the most strategy and skill out of any other minigame. Not a lot for a game this intentionally simplistic, but there's at least more control in your actions and reactions here. You must keep moving as the platforms you run on disappear beneath your feet. You're perfectly capable of disrupting other people by cutting off their paths, or prolonging yourself by hopping on each path, especially when you're the only one on your respective level. You could also deliberately drop down to the lowest level and run around the middle to make a giant hole for other people to hopefully fall down in. You can love Hexagon or hate Hexagon, but there is a fairness to this chaos. It's just like Jump Club, but there's an extra pole at the bottom and the platforms give way until there are only 2 left. The last jumping bean remaining will take home the gold crown. Also, this minigame, while shown in the launch trailer, wasn't available at launch and was put in through a future update. It's just like tail tag, but with only 1 tail. If you set aside personal hygiene and are crafty enough when you have a tail keeping your cheeks from clapping together, you should win. Man, where can I get one of those Fall Guys tails online? Mediatonic created a video game that, during its first few weeks after its launch date, dominated YouTube and Twitch viewership. through a strategy that focused more on creating a high player base by having Fall Guys be free for PS Plus members during its launch month. Rather than selling this video game for $20, Fall Guys made sure that it became the most sold digital title on the PlayStation Store just by exposure and word of mouth alone. If anything, the only thing that suffered from this strategy were the servers during the launch window, but that's been remedied now. Mostly. And if you set aside the occasional game crash, server disconnect, and whatever exactly happened here, Fall Guys has little performance issues and will run fine on lower-end PCs. Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout is a video game that is best enjoyed in bursts or a couple of hours at the most, unless you're able to get past the lurking feeling of shallowness so that you're able to get that skin that makes you look like Scout from Team Fortress 2. This is a video game that anyone can pick up and play. Battle Royale title that won't have ludicrously skilled players training their sniper rifle reticles at your head. All of the tools for longevity are here, as proof by the upcoming Season 2 that turns Fall Guys from Ultimate Knockout into Medieval Knockout. Whether you were skilled enough to have over 100 wins and crowns to your name, or lucky enough to have only one, this game will unite the best and the worst of humanity in a lovable jelly bean package that is canonically 6 feet tall and filled with—
Kill it with fire!
Woo! Who am I kidding? Where can I buy a Fall Guys plushie?
Let the record show that as of 3:33 a.m., the patient has survived phase 1 of the operation.